Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Capital City Bikeway on Kellogg project. My name's Anna Potter. I am a transportation planner with the City of St. Paul. I will talk to you today about the Phase 2 version of the project. This project is a 2025 construction project to add a bicycle facility to the north side of Kellogg between St. Peter Street and 7th Street. The project extent is what's shown in red on the screen. This is the second phase of a three-phase project. The first phase, if you've been out to Kellogg recently, you've probably seen it already constructed. It's a bikeway on the north side of Kellogg between Jackson and St. Peter. Know that right now what's constructed is only until Wabasha. We're going to do the last leg of that project this season in 24. There's a third phase of the project as well that continues from 7th Street all the way to John Ireland, and that will be constructed in 2027. This project is a part of an overall network of bikeways downtown. And on the screen, you see a map, and there's a red highlighted portion. That is the project that we're going to construct in 25, and that will show you the concept for today. You can see that it connects to a whole bunch of other bikeways downtown, some of which are already constructed, some of which are funded in coming years. But the purpose of this one section of the bikeway is to connect all of downtown to the broader bicycle network throughout the city. Here you can see a picture of the Phase 1 section of this project. We're looking at Kellogg Boulevard. We're looking east in this picture. You can see the bikeway is on the north side of Kellogg, where my cursor is, and we're keeping 2 travel lanes on Kellogg in either direction outside of the bikeway. One difference between that first phase of work and this phase of work is there are a lot of other projects that are also planned near our bikeway project on Kellogg. The map on the screen shows the location of these projects. You might have heard of one or more of them already. Know that as the Public Works team is working through the design for this bikeway project, we are working with each one of these other project teams to make a Kellogg Boulevard that works for all of these different projects. In that coordination effort, the city has identified several goals for Kellogg Boulevard that we're trying to achieve between each one of these projects. And I'll just walk through them really quickly. The first one is to make this Capital City Bikeway connection. Again, that's this red line on the map. It's a part of that broader bikeway network. So one of the things that we want to do between all these projects is to make this bikeway connection. The second thing we want to do is to be compatible with event center operations as an economic engine of downtown. You'll notice that the bikeway goes right by the Xcel Energy Center and St. Paul River Center. These 2 event centers create a lot of economic development for downtown. They create a lot of activity. They bring a lot of vitality to downtown. And we want to make sure that our project, this bikeway project, and all these other projects make those events even better and give people more options to get to some of the best events in St. Paul. We want to create a welcoming pedestrian event experience and environment. So in addition to giving people options to get to these events, we want to make sure that when they're here as a pedestrian, this area next to the Xcel and the River Center and across the street on Kellogg is a great experience as a pedestrian. We want to be compatible with the eastbound Kellogg Bridge at River Center. So that's this sort of yellow color here. That's a very large bridge project that Public Works has fully designed and is seeking funding for. You may or may not have heard of this project. You might have already given input into the design process. We are working with that team to make sure that our two designs work together. We also want to be compatible with the Riverview corridor. So that's the line shown in blue on this map. If the Riverview corridor selects streetcar as their mode, the streetcar would navigate on Kellogg, as shown in blue here. And so as we are designing the bikeway on the north side, we're making sure that we also consider a future streetcar on Kellogg in our operations and our design process. And finally, there are a lot of land use changes that might happen in the future, ultimately with the goal of reorienting downtown towards the river. And so we're keeping these in mind and just staying in touch with these project teams to ensure that any increase in density is accommodated in our design. So that includes things like the river's edge development, any changes to the River Center parking ramp, the Parks Department River Balcony Initiative, and the Riverview Corridor that I already talked about. So with that, we'll get into what the design looks like for the second phase of the Kellogg Capital City Bikeway. Before I jump into that graphic, though, which is available on our website, a couple things that I want everyone to keep in mind that we have to consider as we were creating this concept. First is that the bikeway needs to be on the north side of Kellogg and that the bikeway is at sidewalk level. This decision was made as a part of the Kellogg network study and design guide. There were several other things considered in that study, but ultimately, in order to actually have a bikeway here, the only feasible cost-effective option is to put it on the north side. And so that's where it's going to be. Exchange Street will still exist. That's that street that connects Washington down to Eagle Parkway. That street will be reconstructed as a part of the eastbound Kellogg Bridge project, and our designs are going to continue to assume that that street is still there. I've already talked about eastbound Kellogg Bridge, so our design has to be compatible with that bridge project. There are a lot of historic properties along the corridor, and that means that there's a chance that certain aesthetic decisions are outside of our control in order to be consistent with the historic designation of these properties. It also creates some constrained existing sidewalk widths that probably will have to be replicated in the future because we're not able to move historic features. The drop-off zone on Kellogg and westbound access to the parking ramp outside River Center is going to be maintained in our project in order to achieve that goal of being compatible with event center operations. Both of those items are essential functions for the River Center and for the Xcel Energy Center, so we're going to keep them in the future. That said, travel patterns by all modes are unique during events, and we are keeping that condition in mind, but know that the police can change the way people get around, and they do, in order to make it easier and better during those large events. And this could include things like rerouting traffic like they do today, closing down streets, or on the bikeway, they could be requiring a dismount zone. I mentioned the Riverview streetcar. I just want to make it clear that the assumption is that the streetcar would be in mixed traffic, meaning it shares a lane with cars, and the station locations are yet to be determined. And generally, 4-lane undivided cross sections are undesirable, so we are trying to avoid them wherever we can. Okay, and with that, here is the concept. This is our first take at all of the inputs that I just went through and saying, well, how can we make it all fit? At this view, you can't really see the detail. Feel free to go to our website and download this and look at it at your leisure. But I will zoom in and walk you through the corridor now. So the project starts at St. Peter, where it says phase 2 extent here. This phase 1 extent will be constructed in the 2024 season. My computer needs to reload for a moment. Just bear with me. Oh, good. It's not as blurry anymore as well. We're showing the bikeway on the north side of Kellogg, as already discussed. The bikeway would be at sidewalk level, and we would keep at least a 6-foot sidewalk zone north of the bikeway, between the bikeway and the buildings. There are some blocks where we have more room than 6 feet, and so we will use that. One of those blocks is this block outside Lumen and Evergreen Energy Building. We are working with each one of the property owners to program the space between the building and the bikeway. Each instance is unique, a little different, and so we're working with each property owner to make sure that that space is designed in a way that works for them. The bikeway continues to Market, and it would cross Market and keep going along Kellogg. We're going to go by the library next, and this is one of the blocks where the building that we're adjacent to is historic and has a historic designation. And so what we are able to put in the sidewalk area will be dictated by what's acceptable next to the historic building. This block represents the tightest pinch point on the corridor at Market. There's a wall right here that we will not be impacting. And that wall creates today a somewhat narrow walkable space. We won't be making that space any more narrow, but we're also not taking down the wall in order to make it any wider. The bikeway continues along Washington and over Washington, and starts to get onto the block with the River Center and the Excel. You'll notice that we are keeping each one of the driveways on the corridor. So at this location, there's a driveway into a parking ramp that is below the River Center. We'll be maintaining that driveway access post-project. The bikeway stays at sidewalk level and will go right by the St. Paul River Center access and drop-off zone. We'll also be navigating by a few different gates into Xcel Energy. What we're showing on the concept right now is sidewalk reconstruction in the right-of-way. We are, as I mentioned earlier, working with each one of the property owners, including the Xcel Energy Center, to develop where it makes sense for the project to end its construction. As I said, this line shown here is the right-of-way line, but as Xcel Energy Center fleshes out its planning process for renovations inside the building and renovations outside the building, if there are improvements that make sense for our project to do in collaboration with their efforts, we are open to our project's limits changing a bit to accommodate and be consistent with what they want to program in the future. So it's pretty early in the project, and at this point, we're just showing going to the right-of-way line, but fully expect that our project would end up improving some additional public realm outside the Xcel Energy Center. So with that in mind, we have quite a bit of space on this last block getting to West 7th Street, where the bikeway is separated from the curb by about a 5-foot buffer. This is a buffer space that would include snow storage in the winter. This is where street lights would go. This is where other furnishings, trash cans, those types of things would go. And we would also be looking at what makes sense for trees. There's a chance that as we look at where utilities are, the bikeway might shift, potentially a little bit closer to the building so that we can have more space for trees between the bikeway and the street. Oops, went too far. Okay, and that's the concept. And like I said, you can go to our website and download it and review it in more detail. If you have questions, you can also talk or email me. And my computer has frozen again, so bear with me as I get to just the last couple slides here. The project will be finalizing this concept this spring. And you know that there are still a lot of engineering decisions that have to be made after that happens, but we're sort of in feasibility stage where we're making sure that this type of concept, there are no fatal flaws to it, and it fits within budget and schedule. After we get that concept finalized and we feel that it is a feasible project, this summer and through the fall and winter is when we're going to be doing final engineering. Next spring, so early in 2025, we'll bid the project, and then throughout the summer, spring and fall of 2025 is when we would construct the extent of the bikeway project that I just walked through. One thing to note is the timing of that construction and the staging of it will certainly be coordinated with eastbound Kellogg Bridge project. At this point, that project is unfunded, and so it looks like we will be able to construct and get out of their way before the Kellogg Bridge project begins. But if that were to change, we would certainly coordinate with them and make sure that access is maintained in a more limited fashion in some way throughout the corridor, meaning both of these projects won't be under construction at the same time. Okay, if you have any questions, here is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me or anyone on the project team. Again, my name is Anna Potter. I'm in Public Works. My phone number is 651-266-6058. And my email is anna.potter@ci.stpaul.mn.us. And thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate you listening to the video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.